Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Shope with Adam Krautwurst, and we are very excited to be joined by the gatekeeper of high-stakes fantasy data, Darren Armani, a.k.a. Fantasy Mojo. We're going to talk about trends, the FFPC waiver wire, which runs tomorrow, without hopefully giving too much away. A big part of life in the deep end is bad beats, and
you were saying?
That cut right there is a little bit of a bad beat already, so it's keeping with the theme.
Instincts, Mike.
Instincts. Not the worst beats ever, but, last night, I'm new to the deep end, Darren, and last night was a little bit harsh, trying to get home on Hawkinson. Can't complain, came up a little bit short. Then losing a main event game on the golf scramble on the 2-minute drill was, whatever. It's just part of life in the deep end, I suppose. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I didn't catch that. You lost your main event on the last sequence of the game?
I was up against Goff, which, you'd never want to lose to Goff. And, his run, he had a nice little run and a couple of dump offs to Swift. But, do you do this? Do you guys do this? You have one where you think you might win, but then you immediately think about your score and you think, well, maybe I didn't deserve it.
Yeah. No, I've been there, but I've also taken, bad beats too, where it's like, I don't think there's such thing as deserving it, but no, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. I'm a little superstitious. Sometimes I'll just shut it off after halftime and whatever happens. I wake up the next day, or I'll wake up in the middle of the night, check the scores, like, win or lose. I didn't have to suffer real time, Did
that take getting used to? Because I like the idea of that. I know Scott Fish talks about how he says you're going to be happier if you don't watch your scores on Sunday. That's something that I feel like, will be tough to adjust to, but I sort of like the idea of it.
The day games I'll keep up on, but the night games, it's like stay awake that late. I'm on the East Coast, so I'm like, sometimes it's not worth it. Just like get some Z's, and the outcome's going to be the same either way, whether you suffer real time or in the morning.
Adam, do you believe that? By the way, so this is my first year competing with Adam, and last Sunday I'm texting him about plays. He's like, "Don't talk to me. I don't want to know anything on Sunday." Right?
Yeah, no, I was going to ask Darren. So I'm in a ton of leagues, but I do not follow my score. I won't look at my scores until usually after Sunday Night Football. Like I'll follow along because I want to make sure that I swap, injured guys in and out during the weekend. But I make a conscious effort not to look at the score because what's it gonna? I don't want it to ruin my day. Like I know who I have a lot of. I know who I've faded. But I don't want to know like what's going on until maybe like Sunday night after the games. And then it's just, like after last night's game, I knew I had a ton of Hawkinson. So I knew I was going to like what I saw when I went to the scores. So, that's what I do.
The problem is if you're too detached from it, like stuff can happen right before that 4:00 start, or there could be injury scenarios that you need to be aware of. You don't want to like take the whole day off. Like it's good, go do your thing from 1 to 3, and then like you got to check in and make sure nothing unexpected has happened.
For sure.
Exactly. My friend Jim was just telling me how on the Bills bye week coming up, he pledged to his young daughter, "I'm giving you the whole day. I promise I will not watch football the whole day." And he was very proudly and excitedly telling me about that. I said, "Jim, not 3:30 to 4:30. You have to plug in from 3:30 to 4:30. Then the rest of it, fine. But you can't, like you just said, you can't take that risk."
Yeah, you need to check in just to keep it honest.
Right. I forgot again this week, by the way, just one more thing on that. At about 2:00 Eastern or so on Sunday, I texted Adam because I know it was his favorite guy, Cooper Kupp, exclamation point. And as soon as I sent it, Darren, I remembered, like, he doesn't want to know, but at least it's good. And he just responded simply with, "Easiest pick in the draft."
Yeah, that's it. But it's like you gave him a Christmas present that he's going to open up later on. You gave him a teaser. So
right.
Well, I mean,
right.
he can do stuff like that. Like I'm locked into red zone. Like I knew what was going on, but it was just.
Right. You're following the league. You're just not following your scores.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Darren, let's talk about week 1 before we get into what we might see this week. In terms of FFPC moves, ad drops and the waiver wire, I mean, it's pretty hectic, it seemed. You have the experience in it that I don't, but I thought it was just heavy action last week. And of course, with Elijah Mitchell, you saw a lot go down there. Was there anything surprising about either the numbers you saw with Mitchell or just sort of how it played out for you?
He actually, went for a lot more than I thought he would. Because on the website, we have historical waiver wire data. So you can roughly approximate like, okay, the top running back's going to go for this much, the top receivers. It kind of follows the same thing year to year. So where I wanted to go hard at him, I bid like around 750, but it literally, the closer we got to the waiver locks, the market was moving, and I partially blame like these ship chasing guys for like kind of, they get a lot of people on the streams and they were talking them up, but just in general, social media creates like this demand. So as we get closer to the locks on submitting bids, like there's this swell of propaganda around certain players that is driving the prices up, which we didn't really have in the past. So now I'm like, okay, I look at my historical data and maybe I need to add like 10-15% on the guys who are getting the most talk, leading up to the bid lock time.
Yeah, that's a great point. I completely agree. You can feel it, especially with, we all kind of follow the same people and we're all running in the same kind of high stakes circle. I guess my question would be with like an Elijah Mitchell situation, where you got him? Are you, after a week, are you happy with what happened with the situation? I mean, with how the carries were handled there and the work there and now the injuries there, like, are you okay with spending the 750, 800 on him?
Well, I watched the whole game, and I rarely get to watch an entire game these days just because of family obligations on Sundays. But I did watch the entire because it was against the Eagles.
Yeah.
So, the Eagles let them hang around. The Eagles came out, they had the momentum, and then like they let opportunities slip away. And like I could see it coming, San Francisco, they let him hang around. But Mitchell was getting all the carries, except for a few third down plays they'd bring in Hasty. But Mitchell was getting the carries. And then they did at one point give Hasty a series, but then he got hurt, and then Sermon came and got hurt. And so if I have Mitchell, I think I'd be pretty happy. He's still the last man standing,
right
at this point. So with a better draw, who do they have this week? I'm not sure who they play this week, but
Green Bay.
Yeah, I think he's probably like a mid RB2. I would say. So I'd be pretty happy. There's nobody on the waiver wire this week that presents that type of value. So I'd be happy if
even if he's not an RB2, people spend so much money on him, you feel like you got to start him anyways. But I agree. All those injuries certainly helped his case for sure.
Yeah. So I don't think there's much buyer's remorse on that.
What about the practice of spending 80 to 90 to 99% of your money the first week? I mean, there'd be an obvious reluctance to do that. Everybody, people spend more than $1,000 on these teams, and you sort of want to settle in, and you like your draft. Everybody likes their draft, so you want to sort of go along. But as somebody who did not bid on Mitchell, really, just token bids. I mean, I was not ever going to be a player for him. I was a little bit jealous of the winners, thinking that maybe they knew something I didn't. This is my first year. So maybe they knew that it was the money's more disposable than perhaps common sense would tell you.
Yeah, there's two schools of thought. There are the high stakes players who, if they feel like they kind of like look for that opportunity early on to like, just go for the guy. And then if he doesn't hit, then they're going to live with it. And I don't want to call his name out, but there's a very notorious high stakes player who takes that approach. And then there's other guys that just, kind of like to play it a little closer to the vest and like to have that money at the end of the season. I put myself in that category because I want the hammer when playoffs come around and, you're trying to win in the league championship, like you can control the waiver wire. I like doing that as well. Now, in my mind, I don't, the $800-900 guy, Mitchell to me didn't seem like that type of guy. Like last year, maybe like a Mike Davis when Christian McCaffrey went down, like no doubt about it, bell cow that you're going to have. That's when you throw all the money at it. And some people thought also that was the case last year with when Saquon went down. And I think people were throwing money at Devonta Freeman. Was a similar situation. That didn't happen out, but that's the type of profile you're looking for, like go all in early. But
Well, I think you brought it up on Twitter too, Darren. I think it was you talking about it's the intersection with the zero RB and the hero RB. If these teams need, and I have a lot of those type teams, they need that. Part of the success of that strategy is grabbing these waiver wire running backs, and you need them. And it just happened to be this year. It was, week one, everyone had their money. A lot of people are doing that strategy. So let's see what happens. And, I think that was, like you said, the kind of the perfect storm there for that. And, there's going to be a lot more to come. I mean, this is a longer season. But I think people are getting smarter. They're drafting more handcuffs and they're holding on to them longer, I think, because they know it's an injury. I mean, you saw, the Niners backfield decimated. What's the other backfield I'm drawing a blank on? That's toast. Oh, the Ravens, toast. Like, I mean, even Elijah Moore could be out for the year next week. Like, it's just crazy.
Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah, that's right. Elijah Mitchell could be gone next week. Like, it's like, do I want to drop 900 fab on a guy that maybe he is an RB2, but the volatility at the position with the injuries, he could be out in 3 weeks. So, and that's what makes it exciting. That's why I love season long, lineup setting over best ball, because I just love the action all season long, having to make these, split second decisions. You have like a day to make all these decisions. And I just think it's so much fun.
Yeah. I think that premise is overstated though. Like they draft these hero RB or zero RB teams like, oh, well, we're just going to grab that first guy off, that comes off. But if you did that with Mitchell, you really kind of forced it. And you didn't get the production out of it. And now what you're seeing is, a lot of these traditional, injury dependent backups, a lot of them got dropped. Like so many of them got dropped. So there's actually quite a bit out there. Just the draft capital that people invested. You saw them loading up on these guys in the 9th, 10th, 11th round, like just loading up on those, backups. So many of them got dropped. There's actually quite a bit out there on the waiver wire this year that you can now go scoop up for dirt cheap.
Not that you guys are necessarily not doing this, but I want to defend the premise a little bit. I mean, a lot of it is based on injuries. And here you had in the first week, I mean, I think those ship chasing shows are really good. Those are very smart guys. And who are the names, some of the names anyway, of the wide receivers you were building around? Well, one was Jerry Jeudy, who I think his owners feel lucky he's not out for the year. I mean, that was a scary looking injury. Maybe in half the season or even possibly earlier, he's okay. The first night of the year, you lost Michael Gallup for maybe a month. He was one of those players. And of course, Brandon Ayuk is in a certain way worse because he's not hurt, but you just don't know what to do. Even through 2 weeks, there's no real evidence that they're going to use him prominently. You already had other injuries, but the part of the idea, not that I'm here to speak for it, but just from listening to it and reading about it, is the volatility at running back. So RB2 is easier to fill in as you go. And yet here we were, I mean, wide receiver 2 or flex positions where you want to win, Darren, there were setbacks right away. And I'm guessing that all three of us faced some of these obstacles, with those players. Plus, if you picked like a Michael Thomas, say, because you felt safe with Jeudy and Ayuk and the like, then that's even more sort of quicksand that you're in already.
Or Michael Thomas before the surgery, before we knew about the surgery, you know what I mean? Like these safer receivers. And like you said, and you forgot even, you mentioned ship chasing, they're, Laviska Shenault, they're like poster boy, right? Like he's been, and I have some Laviska too. He's been not so good. So and now hurt. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I do enough teams where I get all. There's no perfect strategy. I employ a little bit of everything, and but with each league comes with its own challenges, with its own fab budget challenges, its own lineup setting challenges, and you just got to be able to kind of maneuver that through the course of the year.
Right.
Yeah, and the running back attrition, it seems like it's been worse this year than in previous years. I mean, it's really sort of it's off the charts. But it's personally speaking, the teams that I have that are doing better are probably the ones I went heavier wide receiver on in those first 7-8 rounds. So I guess it's working, but in the long, I still believe, like, when it comes down to the championship weeks, just having seen what these teams look like who actually win, they have the stud RB that they got in the first round. We don't know who it is, but that's usually the guy who explodes, and then it's a stack with a quarterback and another wide receiver. That's sort of the consistent profile of these championship winning teams in that 3-week sprint that I've seen. So I'll be, the zero RB approach might be a self-fulfilling prophecy because so many people are now doing it. Somebody just might win who did that.
Right.
Just by the matter of volume of people doing that these days. But
again, I'm relatively new, but don't they always say in fantasy that there's just always an inherent value in doing what the other guy isn't doing? So whatever the strategy is, if you're going in a different direction, you maybe or even should be able to capitalize on that. I want to get to some of those running backs, or at least a couple. We don't want to keep you all night, but you have the top 200 teams, bottom 200 teams that you tweeted. Before we do that, I mentioned Gallup before, and I'm in a main event league where Gallup was dropped after week 1. And, I think we all want to think that if you draft somebody with an injury risk like a Thomas or Rashad Bateman, or then you have the injury, you want to be a little bit patient. I'm sure there are times when you can't, or you think you can't afford to be. Who might be a couple names as you've scoured the field that were dropped where, you might think that could be a mistake, and then, B, just sort of want to be able to capitalize on it, or maybe offer some strategy on what to do next time in that situation.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people don't have much patience. In terms of wide receiver, the heavy drops last week. Henry Ruggs was dropped and we're talking, FFPC football guys leagues. Henry Ruggs was dropped in 40 leagues. Quez Watkins, I mean, people bailed on him pretty quick after that first game where he didn't do anything, and then you saw how explosive he was last week. He was dropped in 142 leagues. So it looked like it seems like, this isn't going to work out for him. But there's just going to be churn. There's going to be these receivers, especially, get recycled over the course of the year. So there's always players you're going to be able to pick up. So, and I did see Rondale Moore get dropped. He only in 5 leagues, but maybe if you're lucky, you check in your league that where that happened, and he actually leads the Cardinals in targets over the first 2 games. So, if you got him, you got to be starting him, I think, at this point.
All right, let's take a look at the data from you on it's on your Twitter, on your website as well, fantasymojo.com. The
Darren,
top 200.
Do you mind if I share that graph, Darren, of the top 200, bottom 200?
Oh yeah, no, that I posted that on Twitter, so that's cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Top 200 teams. Who are the most? Oh, Cooper Kupp. Adam, where's the jersey at this point?
I gotta get one.
Anything? I have a name on the right list, the losing list, that I want to mention. But is there somebody, Adam, perhaps, or Darren, that sort of stands out? I mean, Gronkowski, I guess. I was drafting Friday night, the game the night before. We lost. My partner and I lost week 1 to a team that had Brady and Gronk, who knew the results. That's one way to play it. Do I remember right, Darren, that you tweeted after that game or right around that game that, like, people maybe overreact to the opener normally, or what?
Yeah, I thought in the case of Gronkowski, like I saw him going in the third and fourth round out in Vegas, and I was like, man, I don't know that I could do that. That might have been his best game all year. Like the touchdown aggression's coming, like, going south. It has to be. So I think that evens out. Like, I don't see him doing this every week. There's too many other weapons for Tampa Bay. I mean, Brady's amazingly playing out of his mind, but so I might eat my words on that, but 4 touchdowns after 2 weeks, so he can't possibly keep that. Now Hawkinson is more the type of guy where, like, you feel like he can continue to produce like that, because he's really the only weapon, and Goff is just feeding him the ball.
Yes. I think a lot of it has to do, like you had, I think Mike had said, where you got to draft him and start him. And a lot of you got to wait to see what he did on Thursday night, because I can't imagine that teams would have started him had he not played Thursday. Like, people weren't taking Gronk as their number 1 tight end. You know what I mean? They weren't going to start him. So they were able to kind of see that Thursday night game, and that certainly helped kind of raise that winning percentage there. But yeah, it's interesting to see. You've got quarterbacks, you've got tight ends, you've got defenses, you've got kind of you got 0 RB running back targets, James White, Latavius Murray. You've got a bunch of 4th round receivers, right? Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett, Thielen, Amari Cooper. So yeah, it's just kind of a plethora of different positions. I don't see, and you always post these every year, Darren. Do you see like a rhyme or reason to these when you post them at the beginning of the year like this?
It's just the guys who have exceeded expectations relative to where they were drafted.
Yeah.
Like Marquise Brown is sort of a later guy, and Rondale Moore is a later guy. But so that's typically what you see, and that becomes more obvious when you look at the losing side and you see, Barkley and Kamara. Not like they've, Barkley neither has really delivered. You spent so much draft capital on those guys, and to be getting 7-8 points is really going to kill you, because you're going to keep starting him regardless. It's not like if it was an 8th rounder and the guy gave you 7 points, you'd look elsewhere. But you're just, for these guys, you're going to keep plugging them in there. Washington defense, everybody thought they were going to smash. I mean, I saw guys drafting Washington defense in like the 10th, 11th round. Most of the time they were the first defense off the board.
Yeah.
So people are playing them and they're not getting anything out of it. And, we've got other guys up there. Gesicki hasn't really done much. And Pittsburgh seems like it's a mess. And Russell Gage he got you the goose egg week 1 as well. So
what did Larry Roundtree do to deserve?
I don't know.
Bottom.
That's like he showed up, but I can't really tie that to something in particular. Yeah, I mean, he was there. But this is from Football Guys. When I looked at the same data for main event, they were pretty similar. The only one that showed up in the losing category that kind of stood out that wasn't here was Marquez Callaway, was a guy that, people were, he got as high as the 8th or 9th round as well. And he hasn't really done anything. So he's been a killer for some teams too.
Yeah, the Football Guy's point mitigates the weight of the opener, right? If it's a main event, you'd see Gronkowski and Brady, even Amari Cooper, and think that first game, less so the Tampa Bay defense, most of their value was in week 2. I have 2 main event teams with Alvin Kamara, Darren. He was 2 overall by the time I drafted, of course, 3, 4, 5 range for most of the offseason, if not lower. That's interesting, right? Like, he had a playable first game, not elite at all, and kind of a dud in game 2. Barkley makes sense with it's to be expected, right? He was going to have a slow start off his injury, but Kamara is a different deal. Your thoughts on him, like how he was drafted, or even just maybe what that looks like going forward?
Well, I think he was going between like he kind of drifted between second, and sometimes he went as far as 8th and 9th. During that drafting area, the preseason. I think he's, I don't know if I think he'll end up being like a 2nd round value in terms of production by the end of the year. That last week was just really bad. So the data you're looking at here is really just 2 weeks. So it's heavily skewed from those 2 games. I think it'll normalize over the course of the season. But other guys who you would be concerned about are like Barkley, the guys in Pittsburgh. Like you got to like be worried about them as well. So and then Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, wow, that's you almost felt like you had to take him when he was sitting there at the end of the second or the beginning of the third round, but he's really not done much. So that'll be interesting to see how that shakes out too.
Yeah, definitely. See, I find myself a little more excited about now. Granted, probably because I own a little bit more of him, but Barkley over because I don't think we've had the opportunity to see Barkley really yet. He's got Atlanta this week. I think is the coming out party for him. If it doesn't happen this week, then look out. But at least he looks pretty explosive. Edwards-Helaire, like you said, he's just not that good. Like, I think we've all seen enough now to realize that. And can you imagine if they would have taken DeAndre Swift or Jonathan Taylor or like one of these other stud backs?
How about T. Higgins?
Or T. Higgins? Sure, that's right. Or anybody there at the end of the first round. Like, man, they could be even more explosive than they are now.
Yeah,
but they don't have that second wide receiver really pinned down. They never have. So I don't know what that is. I mean, Edwards-Helaire was kind of a luxury pick. They had the quarterback weigh in on it, if not decide it. And one running back versus another, who knows? But, come on. Who among us anymore is not rooting against the running back pick in the first round for most of these teams? And those great receivers around 2 years ago, who knows? But, well, long way to go.
Right. And getting back to the Giants, that's to look towards the waivers for this week. So Daniel Jones is actually available in 85% of the leagues, and on his legs for the most part, he's put up huge numbers. So he should be, given the running backs that went down last week, there's a market now, I think, for a productive running back. So I think the bids on him should be. You don't usually see really high numbers for a quarterback, but he's probably Justin Fields isn't really available. He's only available in 4 leagues in the Football Guys, but Daniel Jones is probably going to be the most heavily added quarterback for this week. So he's out there, and if he can keep it up, that'd be great.
Literally 4 leagues out of whatever it is, 13,000 or whatever it is.
Well, four leagues out of 1,100.
1,100. Okay.
Yeah. And they just dropped them last week. So again, some people just don't have patience. Like, I don't get it. Like, you go into the draft and you're like, oh, I have this like long-term vision of I'm going to have you wait till Andy Dalton gives it up. And then, I'm going to slide Fields in. But like, why are you getting rid of Fields like so soon? I mean, I don't get it. So it's a different experience level of a lot of these players in these leagues.
Yeah.
So, it happens.
Well, Darren, it's a pleasure to talk to you and even also follow your information. Adam and I sat in your seminar in Canton, and that was pretty cool to be a part of that at the expo. And then we saw you in Vegas too. So I guess this is the part where we just sort of settle down, but I don't feel too settled.
Yeah. Now we got a long way to go. So it's only week 2 of we got the 12-week regular season here. So it's like already like it's emotionally exhausting already. Like the first couple of weeks, it's like we got to make it 10 more weeks. So, but we love it. This is what we were waiting for. It's like you draft all preseason, and it's pretty much just with like a week 1 sort of mindset. But now, like every week, like the whole landscape changes week to week. It's just like it totally. Erases your preconceived notions from the prior week. So every week it just changes. So, it's fun. So we'll keep doing it, man. And I saw in the Pros versus Joes, you're very close to the top of the division there. You got just one guy ahead of you. So you're coming out of the gates quick there too. So
we have. I've been watching that one. We have.
Who are we taking down?
Ev Silva's right there with us, and then is it Ryan Lips?
Ryan Lips is the division leader, but you're not far behind him. So
no, and I reached out to you about that because he drafted Akers, And, that's pretty good if his team is able to hang in there for a while after that really bad luck. But I like that team. That was an Adam Krautwurst operation mostly. Aaron Jones at 212 and then Ridley at 3-1. Ridley has not really gotten going yet, but then it's the Rams. Higbee and Kupp and even Van Jefferson in week 1. So
now your draft looks strong. You went CMC, Aaron Jones, that paid off. Then you got Ridley, Julio, Cooper Kupp. Judy got hurt, and you got Pollard. So that's getting points where you probably didn't, expect. And you got Justin Fields too. He's so things are continuing to look up for you. So it looks like you're on the right path.
Continuing is very polite of you. I won't be happy unless Diami Brown wins it for us or Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah. No, I got a lot of Diami Brown too. And that was, with Fitzpatrick out of there, that's like, maybe, that was kind of based on him throwing him bombs, but we'll see if it happens for Diami or not. I don't know.
It's early.
Yeah.
All right. Darren, thanks a lot. We'll be in touch soon.
Gentlemen, good talking to you.
Thanks so much, Darren.
Darren Armani, Fantasy Mojo.
Love it.
Deadline is 10 tomorrow, but there's nobody watching this show in an FFPC high stakes league that doesn't know that.
Correct. 10 p.m. Eastern time. Hey, did we take Ryan Santoso in that Pros vs. Joes, or is that
we did not. No, I don't think he was born yet. I don't think Ryan Santoso was born yet by the time we drafted Pros versus Joes. By the bare knuckle. So I did that bare knuckle draft with Adam 2 weeks ago. Is that all it was? Thursday. It's not even 2 weeks ago yet.
God.
And I wrote about this, how I was walking around the ballroom that night in Las Vegas, just cramming in my mind, drinking water. Adam's just sort of grooving. And he's got his friend Sam there, and he's watching the game, and he's all excited. And I'm just like, okay, Ryan Santoso, Mike Amendola, Tristan Vizcaíno, Ryan Santoso, Mike, just trying to memorize the kickers. Even like Sunday, Tennessee wins the game in Seattle in overtime. I have no idea who that is. Like, they have been through so many different kickers. It probably changed during that draft. Probably, yeah. So I bailed. I took Bass for Buffalo because I knew he was legit. Matt Gay for the Rams, and then Fairbairn for Houston. And I had Biplop to my right say, or no, it was his sub who said, I think he's out.
Oh no.
So we'll see. I mean, I was just like we talked about this last week. I was happy to have survived it. Yeah, no, you listen. You guys did great. I had to stick around to show my support to everybody. I mean, everybody was super impressive in that, and I didn't want to embarrass myself. So well done. So running the FFPC race, we talked a little bit about this with Darren in terms of spending so much right away. You've got more experience. Talk about how you want to. I mean, it probably varies, right? How you want to space out your money, and when you decide to pounce. Yeah, I take it team by team, right? So it really depends on what my team looks like, what my bench looks like. If it's like if you had a team that was really rock solid at running back and maybe even had Trey Sermon, like you weren't going to add Elijah Mitchell, especially for 750, 800, right? But if you had a team that went 0 RB or something like that, you were willing to drop that money. Maybe, because even I had teams where I have a lot of teams I went 0 RB or hero RB or whatever, and I put in a bid for 450, knowing that I wasn't going to get him, but I had to keep everybody honest. So, I think it just depends on the team, and I like the teams where I don't have to spend waiver wire money, and don't feel like you have to either. Like you've got these shows like our show and Ship Chase and all these shows that suggest how to use the fab and who to bid the fab out. Like if you're not feeling a guy or you don't need the guy, like, don't spend the money, like save the money, keep it there. And that way you can, have the hammer, like Darren said, at the end of the year. Now, you don't want to get lazy with your roster or complacent, but if you don't think a guy's going to upgrade it or you don't see the value in a player, then don't spend the money. Guys that, if I go through a roster, I'm like, man, I don't really need to add much. And I'm looking, what I'll do is I'll look and find like the second or third string running back on a team. I'll go put in a $3 bid for him and drop some guy off the end of your roster that's maybe hurt for 4 or 5 more weeks, because you don't know you are
a Sunday afternoon away from an entire running back core being decimated, and you having the number one running back there. So that's what I would pay attention to. If you don't think you need to bid any, put any big waiver claims in, go look and see, because you'll be surprised. Darren was talking about, you got guys like Cordarrelle Patterson are still available in like 15% of leagues. Justin Fields is available. Like, go find some of these third string running backs. You get the San Diego backfield. I'm sure there's a bunch of Marlon Mack out there that you can go put a $2 or $3 bid in, because you're an injury away from having a worthwhile piece of a backfield. So that's kind of the way that I approach it. I'm always kind of trying to look 2 or 3 steps ahead.
You're willing to sit some weeks out.
Yeah.
You want to have the money at the end, but really it always comes down, I think, to what your team is. And like, I have a team where I've had 4 or 5 injuries already. That's Judy, that's Gallup, that I think is Paris Campbell. I guess he's disposable.
Yes.
But you just have Hasty, not bidding up on Mitchell, but recognizing the situation meant for me 4 or 5 JaMychal Hasty teams. Now what? High ankle sprain sounds pretty gross. So with all the different guys they have, I don't think I need to hold on to him. I did say that about Judy last week. I wanted to raise the question, like, do I need to hold on to him? And I did, but I really feel like the right attitude is don't be afraid to cut bait. And obviously you don't want to be stupid about that. We're talking about players who were, your idea, like Darren talking about Fields, Adam, like your idea is to take it slow and then you give up. I mean, that's conflict. Yes. But I think what you hear a lot is just, you got to be aggressive enough, whether you spend a lot of money or a little, be aggressive enough to know that changes are going to be necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got guys like, like Hasty, like, go see if, what I was doing a lot of last week when I said, I'm not going to get Mitchell. I'm going for Hasty, and let me put some bids in on Jeff Wilson. Like, that's what you might be doing this week, dropping Hasty and looking for Jeff Wilson. Week 7, week 8, Hobo will be back. Somewhere in there. Like, that's what you got to do. You got to find these backs that are somewhat talented, that are 2-3 players down the depth chart, because that's what wins. You got it. Everyone especially in the main event, everyone's so active and so smart. You're not just gonna be able to just grab the starter or the backup. You got to get that third string guy.
So Hasty or Wilson or Trey Sermon or Kerryon Johnson or Trenton Cannon.
Who's the other
Jacques
one?
Patrick.
Jacques Patrick might be the guy today.
Or Elijah Mitchell.
I got to go look at some XFL.
Or Tom Rathman. Who knows anymore?
When we get off the line here, I gotta go look at some XFL footage of Jacques Vaughn or whatever you said.
Jacques Patrick, yeah. No, Jacques Vaughn was the Kansas point guard. You're not going to find him searching XFL. But that's all right. You have plenty of time. It's only 9-something.
Oh,
you mentioned Patterson. What's your attitude about him? So everybody, the gist of the conversation here is running back needy teams. The pressure's ramped up on a guy like Mitchell because so many teams built without that second RB. Where does that leave you on Patterson, though? If that's your situation this week, what do you want to do with this guy?
Yeah, I mean, I put some bid claims in. I think he's still available. I think I had it. I had it. Darren tweeted about it. I lost it. I want to say it was like 12 to 15% of Football Guys leagues. He's still available. Yeah, I mean, he's certainly worth. And that was the whole thing about Mike Davis, right? It was not that Mike Davis stinks. It's not that the Falcons stink, although maybe they do or whatever. But it was about the volatility of his position. Like, he's not some first round pick, NFL draft pick where they've got so much sunk into him. Like, he didn't get paid a lot. He's a journeyman. Like a guy like Cordarrelle Patterson, who's the same thing, a journeyman, can come in and take half of his work and maybe even take the starting workload over. So it's funny because Jared Smola from Draft Sharks, we do a main event together, me, him, and Guilds, and he was like, "Hey, we should put in a claim for Cordarrelle Patterson." This was last week, and we kind of laughed him off the stage, like, yeah, right, whatever. A 30-year-old breakout running back, and he's probably right. We probably should have put in a bid for him. But it's because it's not even about like, can I close my eyes and foresee him winning me the main event. That's what it's about. It's about him. Can he give me a 15-point week when I need it? Can he to give me a win to get me into the playoffs to push me towards $500,000? It's like a 17 seasons all in one. And it's if you can get a guy like Cordarrelle Patterson, he's available, and you have a 0 RB team, and he can get you 14 points as your RB2. That's a win, and if you can get him for cheap, I think he can do that. He has done that so far. I think he's worth picking up if he's available in your league.
I mentioned at the beginning of the show losing last night on a golf run, and my team didn't score. And RB2, I played the game, just take it slow. So that meant in terms of my roster, Trey Sermon, AJ Dillon, Gio Bernard, I think Mac at the end, but also then Hasty off waivers, and I didn't know who to play by Sunday out of that bunch. So I went with Dillon, and I don't know, that feels like I got sort of beat bad on that, but 2 points or so for him, or 3, and then a 1-point loss is tough.
Yeah.
Justin Fields has come up, so quarterback is really kind of wild right now. You've got injuries again at the position. I don't think injuries to teams like Pittsburgh and Miami or Indianapolis will have much of an impact on this. Last year he had injuries at quarterback too. But Darren talked about Daniel Jones with us. That's interesting. Teddy Bridgewater has been live so far. Sam Darnold has been live so far. And again, Fields is owned everywhere. Like, people plan for him in the way they plan for Trey Lance. Do you want to start Justin Fields? So pros versus Joes, Darren brought that up. That's a best ball league. We don't have a choice to make. But you have Stafford against the Bucks, and Fields likely to start against Cleveland. How tempted would you be to go Fields if that were your choice in a managed league?
And I can, without looking, I can promise you I have that decision at least twice, Stafford versus Fields. I would lean, you're asking me that, I would lean Stafford because if they looked at the game plan that the Cowboys used week 1, it's not going to be to smash Sony Michel or whoever's the healthy running back there into that Bucs defense 30 times. It's going to be spread it out and sling it and try to keep up with them because they're going to score. So that specific one, I would take Stafford. But you have a bunch of Fields. I have Fields everywhere. I have Fields versus Kirk Cousins. I've got Fields versus Jalen Hurts. I've got Fields versus Tom Brady. Like, I was just taking Fields everywhere. I probably would only start Fields over Kirk Cousins out of all those quarterbacks that I named. DraftSharks.com actually has Fields ranked lower than all those guys. But a lot of times I just look at the Vegas lines. Like, if I don't know what to do, just go to the Vegas line, see what the highest point total is, and go with that, because Vegas is usually right. So, but there's that little piece inside that says, man, Fields could run for 100 yards, and it's the excitement. Like, he's an exciting player. I never felt more alive than when I was drafting Justin Fields in the draft. Like, I got him, and now I've got him, and now it's like, okay, let's. He didn't look sensational when he came and subbed in on Sunday. He had Allen Robinson dropped a touchdown and all that, but I think I'm leaning. It depends on the situation, but I think I would lean all those quarterbacks except for maybe Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins looks great fantasy wise, but I could probably pull the trigger on Fields over Cousins.
Yeah, that excitement you want to resist, but on the other side of that coin, in terms of the projections and the rankings, for one thing, we're still not sure he's playing. So you might see, depending on the site and the process, you might see someone, coming in at around 0 for Fields. If there's an average being done, then that would, of course, really wreck the average. But, a guy like this, there is always that tendency, especially in the industry, to play it safe. And in terms of Hurts, I think that was just done. I mean, of course, you could find people, maybe even on this show to my left, who would tell you Jalen Hurts is that's a guy worth picking, but there's still that sort of built into the averages is what? They might trade for Deshaun Watson. They might take him out. They might, they traded for Minshew. These sort of doubts, and what that I think leads to is that the numbers get mitigated. The numbers are sort of compressed because people are worried that the floor might bottom out. And I think you can look at these guys. Some are different than others. A guy like Cousins, the floor isn't going anywhere.
Right.
So the average is pretty sturdy, but Hurts and in a different way Fields and such players, I think there's usually more upside than appears in the projections, because built into those projections are the fears that the floor will bottom out.
Yeah. And you know what, too, though? Like, I really don't feel like, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I just don't feel like quarterback, unless they're going to absolutely smash, you generally don't lose on your quarterback start-sit decision, right? So, like, because they all score so many points, so they're all within, that's why people wait on quarterback, right? Because 1 to 12, it's not that much difference. Now, you get your Lamar Jackson week from last week, and that's why you take those guys higher, Kyler Murray week. And I just feel like even if as long as Justin Fields doesn't get benched, even in a game where he throws 2 or 3 picks, like, that's a loss of 3 points, right? He's going to make that up in rushing. If he's getting killed, there's going to be garbage time runs, garbage time passing. Like, even if he doesn't play well, he could put up a monster performance that could rival all the guys that I had named and everyone in front of him. So I tend to shoot for that quarterback that does have that upside, that does have that 35-point upside, 40-point upside, which Kirk Cousins, generally doesn't have. I mean, this year he's thrown for so many yards so far. I mean, he had an overtime game week 1, but yeah, give me that guy. Give me that guy with that rushing upside, and I'm hoping he comes out this week, plays well, and then we're just off to the races from there.
And you want to assume that they won't take him out. I mean, that's
right.
Another thing that should be different. It's different for certain veterans who we're talking all the time about whether they're going to come out. But once Fields goes in, you can probably trust, especially if Dalton's hurt, which is the situation. You can trust that the team who drafted him like they did will want to see that through. Even in a season-long league, to the end of the year, there's no reason to think Justin Fields would come out. Now, having said that, there's always an exception. Miami last year with Tua, they were constantly taking him out, and I'm riding him in a couple of super flex leagues where I can't even get out of the first quarter last week. One team had Fitzpatrick and Tua, and they both scored less than 1 point before being injured in the first 2 weeks. So hello Davis Mills on that roster. That is really gross. All right, well, that should do it for us tonight. You can tweet at the DeepEnd or Adam Krautwurst, Mike Show. We love fantasy questions and would be happy to respond. I mean, it's great that people watch, and I love this engagement. I love this sort of situation where you have different shows talking about different strategies and making different impressions on the field. I think that's really great. I mean, just compare that with what it was like to watch TV 40 years ago. I don't know
what that's like.
I think Bosom Buddies was on right now 40 years ago. So this has got to be better than that.
Got to be.
Or maybe it isn't. I don't know.
I don't know what a bosom buddy is, but are we bosom buddies?
We could be watching Mork and Mindy. I don't know. Let me think about that off the air.
Is Ben Roethlisberger a bosom buddy now that he's lost a peck for the year? I'm not sure.
That sounds like a good poll question for
that's right,
for our followers.
Well, thanks to Darren Armani. We're gonna try to have him on a bunch more, maybe even weekly if he's up for it. He just has such great insight and these nuggets. Definitely follow him on Twitter because he's got such cool information as far as FFPC leagues and the Football Guys Players Championship and the main event. Just it's really helpful when you're looking at to see like guys that might be available out there on your waiver wire. Even just quickly, that top 200, bottom 200 list. If you're in season-long leagues and you play like we do in the DeepEnd, thank you. That's then right. You see those names on the winning list and be like, well, here's a reminder that maybe I can trade one or two of these guys, like a Gronkowski or somebody, if you think there's somebody in your league who wants to bite. Yeah. So that list is also that, but it's great information. I agree. All right. That'll do it for us. Mike Shope, Adam Krautwurst. We will see you next week on the DeepEnd. Good luck out there. See you guys.